I didn't kill a human, I killed a monster, is what this 30-year-old woman said in court after killing a man in his 50s. Not just any man, but a man who has sexually assaulted her, or aka RAPE-ist. So when one kills their own abuser, can murder be justified? Now, this case was a buzz in South Korea a while back, but I still think there is so many lessons to learn here. And it just goes to show you how things that happen in your life that are traumatic, you must get treatment for it. Otherwise, it builds up and builds up as time goes by. So I would love to hear what you guys think about this case, if you believe she is a murderer or is this justified. So leave a comment down below. Remember, if you guys like these stories and to keep GRAZY TV going, like in this video, just share it with your friends. And who knows, the story might reach someone that really needed it because they might be going through something similar. I kid you not, last night I had a dream that somebody stole my credit card and they used like thousands of my dollars. I was like, where's my credit card? I'm like looking through my bag and I'm in school for some reason. I have like my combo locker. And literally the scammer used $7,000 of my money and transferred it to their account. And then next they were like, I'm transferring $50,000. Something recently did actually really happen to me where I lost a lot of my money from somebody that I trusted. What happened in my life kind of caused this dream. And also I did end up opening an LLC, a business, and maybe it's a premonition that I need to keep my accounts safe, my identity safe. But I know my identity is safe because I personally use Aura. You guys know I've been talking about Aura for years now, and thank you to Aura for being a kind sponsor of GRAZY TV. Aura protects your identity because they will remove your info from data brokers, identity theft protection, even up to $1 million in identity theft protection with Aura, financial fraud protection. But I'm okay because with Aura, they do background checks in literally the dark web. You see if your information like your social security, your card numbers, anything has been leaked online. And best of all, with Aura, you get even VPN protection. So instead of paying for a separate VPN account, it comes with Aura. So you get all of this in such an affordable price. So maybe the dream was telling me I need to go to Aura and recheck my background information because maybe something was leaked. So go to aura.com/GRAZYTV so you guys can get your 2-week free trial so you're not losing anything. It's time to find out if your personal information has been leaked. Thank you so much to Aura. Remember, you guys just checking out the sponsors all really help to run GRAZY TV. So on January 30th of 1991, in a small rural town of Jeonnam-do City in South Korea, a police would find a man, 55-year-old, named Mr. Song, in his little shop, stabbed to death, but in a particular area. When police found him, they saw that his groin area, his male area, has been stabbed multiple times. Actually, that was the only place that the suspect has targeted, if you know what I mean. But he wasn't alone when he was found. There was a woman inside of the shop holding a knife, and of course, she happened to be the killer. Now, this woman was named Miss Kim Pu-nam, or Pu-nam Kim, a 30-year-old woman who was married and had a child. But she wasn't living in Jeollado, she was living in Busan. So why would this lady come all the way to Busan to murder? So this is a story of Miss Kim, and let's go back 21 years from here. So 21 years from 1991 is actually 1970, to be exact, when Miss Kim was only 9 years old. Miss Kim was born and grew up in a small rural town in Jeollado City. And back then in South Korea, especially in rural areas, my mom does this as well, they said that there was a neighborhood well. So people didn't have their own sink in the house. They literally had to get water from the neighborhood well, bring it home, and that's what you use for drinking, washing, cleaning, and things like that. So Kim's mother asked Kim, the 9-year-old, hey, could you please go to the neighborhood well and get a bucket of water for us? It was a normal errand for mothers to ask their children to do. It was also daylight, so nothing out of the ordinary. That is when Miss Kim says that she ran into Mr. Song. Mr. Song, back in 1970, was only 34 years old, but he was also married with a kid. And Mr. Song's son was also 9 years old, and as you guys know, if you grew up in a rural small town, everybody knows each other. So your friend who's also 9 years old, you know their parents, you know pretty much everyone. And Mr. Song, when he saw Kim pouring the water, he goes, "Hey Kim, it's askgrazy. Can you come and run some errands for me in my house?" Now Kim thinking, oh, it's my friend's father, like I know him. Okay, sure. Especially being 9 years old, like you didn't really think much of it. You're taught to help others. You're taught to, be friendly to your parents' friends and neighborhood a저씨s and 아줌mas, right? So Kim says that she followed Mr. Song to his house and went inside of his room. And Mr. Song would close and lock the doors to his room. That's when he completely flipped the switch. Kim says that he started to undress her, block her mouth from being able to scream, and she says that this day she was sexually abused or rape to a 9-year-old. Completely sick. Then after, Mr. Sung would threaten Kim, saying, quote, "If you tell what happened to anyone, I will kill your entire family, your mom, your dad, your brother." As a 9-year-old, you do not have the cognitive function to be able to determine, I'm still gonna go to the police because I don't care. Or no, this guy is actually a monster. He's gonna kill my entire family. You don't know the difference. And I made a story of what happened to me when I was 10 years old. I'll put up a video here of what I made, and obviously I did not go through something as severe as Kim, but going through when an older boy has done this to me when I was 10 years old, I was scared and I did not even tell my parents until I was an adult. So think about this 9-year-old child who has gone through this traumatic thing. It makes sense that she was so fearful that she didn't tell anybody. And she says that for 10 days after what happened, she could barely walk, and it was so painful. And I'm sure a lot of people question, well, I'm sure your parents, especially the mother, would have noticed if Kim was barely walking. But I think what happened was that Kim says that because of the threat, she concealed it. And although if your mother might have asked, "What's wrong with you?" you might have been like, "Oh, I fell. Oh, I'm feeling a little sick." I mean, think about what this 9-year-old would have been going through, keeping this traumatic thing a secret and trying to conceal her pain, what's going on down there. She also said she was bleeding for about 10 days, and to go through that alone, I can't even imagine what she went through. Not only am I thinking because of the threat that the guy would have told you, but I also think that the embarrassment and the shame and the confusion of what just happened to you, and you don't even know what adult sex is. And to have this thing happen to you, I think that the embarrassment probably also stopped her from speaking up. Now we get to kind of understand why 21 years later, Miss Kim blew up. And can this be proven to court though? Well, interesting enough, in this case, they were able to gather some evidence. Number one, remember I said the police found Mr. Song mainly targeted in his groin area. Professionals found that this is not a normal case. Number two, the many, many signs that happened throughout Miss Kim's life from 9 years old to her 30s. Now, Miss Kim did not get any professional help until she was an adult. So from 9 years old until her 20s, this was bottling up inside of her all these years. So one of the most biggest traumatic signs actually came when she was an adult and she first got married. Now, I believe in the 80s in Korea, sometimes they had kind of an arranged marriage where your family or your friends could introduce you to somebody that you think will be good together. Sometimes you don't date that long enough and you just end up getting married because you're now in your early 20s and that's what you were supposed to do. So I guess that's kind of what happened. And a lot of couples back then, you didn't have your first honeymoon night, adult night until you actually got married. Miss Kim and her first husband, after the night they got married, they were supposed to get, sexy in bed, right? Like what couples are supposed to do. Miss Kim's husband, of course, tried to advance and she completely refused and showed traumatic signs no, I can't do this. And every time he tried to get in bed with his wife, she just couldn't do it. So, of course, 2 months into the marriage, he was like, "I can't do this anymore, leave." And as she left her first husband's house and went back to her parents' place, I'm sure her parents were like, "Wait, what happened? Why did you come back? What happened to your husband? Is something wrong?" And that was the first time that she ever spoke up of what happened to her when she was 9 years old. And her parents had to hear the whole thing, you know, years later. And I think as she spoke up for the first time, everything just started to like release itself, because that is when her parents say that like they put her into a mental facility because her condition worsened after that. And at the hospital, they actually diagnosed her with schizophrenia. I'm not sure if all of these signs kind of lead to schizophrenia, or back then like the mental health in South Korea wasn't really as well developed, so everyone that kind of had these kind of symptoms was, you know, categorized as schizophrenic. But you know, that's what she was diagnosed with. I'm not a doctor, but according to the symptoms, every time she was faced with sexual encounters, she had this like traumatic response to it. So once again, only after 2 months into her marriage, she ended up getting a divorce. After that, she had to kind of start a new life. Where was she gonna go after this? And her sister actually lived in Busan. So Kim said, hey, let me go live with my sister, get a job, and start fresh and new. Miss Kim moved to Busan, and it seemed like she actually kind of enjoyed it there and started to live somewhat of a normal life. She got a new job, she started to go to church, and she met another man. And according to the family and friends of Miss Kim, she got along a lot better with her second husband. It seems like she was able to really trust this man, and I guess he somehow was able to open her up, and they were able to have sexual advances, and she eventually even got pregnant. So this is a good news, you know, somewhat loosen herself and start to see a male and a female relationship in a much more positive way. Now, when Miss Kim had her baby, I think she was around in her late 20s, but it seems like after she had her child, that's when the PTSD symptoms came back. Her family and her second husband say that Kim started to not look after the child at all. She would just stare into the wall, not sleep, have severe insomnia, and sometimes when the TV would be running, she would just like punch it and like completely like break the TV and computers and go in almost like a manic episode. And she also started to reject any adult bedtime with her second husband. She was admitted to the mental hospital once again, and this is what the professionals say. Even though a traumatic event might have happened years ago back in the past, the memory comes back and it can't be forgotten. She most likely would have seen her husband's face, and it could have like morphed into the man who has done this to her when she was 9. So to Miss Kim and people who might be going through this, they're very highly sensitive to little things and going through probably a deep depression. It's really interesting because the professionals who had reviewed this case says that if you do not get treatment, it becomes almost like a loan shark experience. You know, loan sharks, they never go away if you borrow money. It just, the interest incurs like week, month, year by year, and you just like, it builds up to the point where you can't handle it. So if you do not get the proper treatment day by day, year by year, the longer it goes on, actually, the worse it gets. And the real important thing that the professionals say with people with PTSD and like Miss Kim, you have to register in your head that this traumatic event happened in the past. Right now, the brain thinks that it's still going on. It's not registering that, oh, it happened in the past, I can move on now. No, it's happening now and I need to protect myself, and all these symptoms start to occur. And that's why also accountability is so important. To physically see your suspect getting accountability is also one of the ways for your brain to register, oh, it's in the past, I've taken care of it, I'm somewhat able to move on. And another person asked, well, why do symptoms come and go? Like Miss Kim, where it seems like it did happen with her first husband, then for years it seems like she was fine, and then with her second husband, after she had a baby, these symptoms came back. Professionals say that during those times when her symptoms weren't as severe, she was still probably fighting it day to day in her head. Miss Kim, as she was going in and out of the mental hospital in her second marriage, she says that she eventually started to even study law because she was like, you know what? No, I'm gonna get revenge on Mr. Song. So it seems like Miss Kim tried to do something about it, even if it's been like 20 plus years. So Miss Kim says that as she was studying law in somehow trying to get accountability for Mr. Song, but her husband told Miss Kim like, hey, it's been 20 years. The statute of limitation is over. This guy can't be put into jail or the law can't do anything. And he was right back then in South Korea up till I believe 2013 actually, so not that long ago. South Korea had a law where if something like this happened to you, meaning if sexual altercation and abuses, if that happens, you have to report it within 6 months, otherwise you can't report that person anymore. Also, sexual harassments or abuses was actually 친고죄, which means that only the victims can report it if you want them to go to prison or get accountability. So the police and the law can't bring him and put him into accountability. The victim has to report it. So Miss Kim hearing that and learning that the law isn't even on her side and she can't do anything about it, she felt so frustrated and unjust, and all these anger started to just blow up. And she decided this time to go and confront Mr. Song herself. So she says that she went all the way to Jeollado to confront her abuser, which is such a brave thing to do. So Mr. Song, now in his 50s, he operated a tiny shop, the same rural area that they grew up in. And Miss Kim went to his shop and said, "Hey, I want to talk to you." Miss Kim screamed and yelled at Mr. Song saying, "Give me back my life." And apparently Mr. Song did not apologize to Miss Kim. Instead, he decided to meet up with Miss Kim's brother and gave him 40만 won, or about $350, and said, "This is a settlement money. Let's just settle it. Don't ever come and talk to me again. We're settled. Like, this is a mediation." First of all, $350. I get this was in around 90s. Even back then, $350 isn't even that much money. I don't think Mr. Song was even a wealthy person anyway, but that's like a slap in the face, you know? And with all of this, apparently it was getting very, very tense between Miss Kim and her second husband. And the husband even told Miss Kim once, "You're better off alone. You're like a mentally retarded woman." After just seeing her just blow up, smashing computers and TVs and refusing any sexual, adult time with her husband, he also just couldn't take it anymore. And that is when Miss Kim thought, this guy, Mr. Song, ruined my life. Even ruined my life with my second husband. Every unlucky thing that happened in my life is due to him, and she decided to take the matter into her own hands since even the law couldn't do anything. So Miss Kim started to practice. She started to practice how to wield a knife, how to end possibly somebody's life, where to target and things like that. And she even made a handmade belt that had like pockets where she could put her knives in it. And on January 30th, 1991, Kim would go back to Jeollado, her own hometown, and stood in front of the shop of Mr. Song. 21 years since the incidents. Miss Kim yelled at Miss Song to come outside of the shop, that she wanted to talk. And apparently Miss Song started to just curse at her like, "Hey, I already gave you the money. Like, we already settled on this. Why are you here?" Miss Kim then walked into the shop and started to stab Mr. Song. Now, Mr. Song apparently had a stroke once in his life, so his right side of his arms and legs were pretty weak, so it's not like he had full strength of a man to try and defend himself. And eventually, he was able to grab the knife from Miss Kim. But she had 2 knives. She really came prepared, you guys. When he grabbed her first knife, she pulled out the second knife and started to attack Mr. Kim again. And attacked mainly the groin area, which just kind of like translates her immense frustration, trauma onto this guy. And that traumatically hurt 9-year-old child. The revenge she was getting on this person. Now we fast forward to the beginning of the story where I said, the police came and took Miss Kim in handcuffs. And after the story went viral in Korea, a lot of these female-ran associations and unions that stands up for female rights came to her defense, saying that she was not guilty, that she did this for her own protection, and getting revenge at her abuser was not guilty. During the trial, the judge that was appointed for this this case, he says that he was actually shocked to see Miss Kim in real life because she was so soft-spoken. She was very quiet and timid and a very like a weak person, at least to the eye. She was not this like raging person like you would read in the court documents. Now, before the final verdict, the judge asked the suspect, Miss Kim, do you have any final words to say? And she said in a very soft-spoken voice that the judge couldn't even hear what she was saying. And she asked the lawyer to repeat what she said, and she said, quote, "I didn't kill a human, I killed a monster," which led the judges and everyone to believe that she did not have any guilt for doing this. She truly believed that she was ending off her abuser, somebody who has killed her a long time ago. The judges did rule that Miss Kim was under 심신미약, which is mental deficiency, somebody who commits a crime under severe mental deficiency, such as if you were not mentally like conscious or there. So they do believe that Miss Kim was unable to control herself. And the verdict was that Miss Kim got 3 years of probation. So the judges did see that, you know, her past completely affected the outcome. We don't know what happened to Miss Kim ever since then. It seems like she hasn't caused any other criminal offenses, so hopefully she's somewhere out there living peacefully with her child and she was able to get some treatment and was able to move on from this. And in 2013, finally, the sexual crime laws in South Korea did strengthen. So no longer the crime being only punishable if the victims report, but the law or the police can take the person and put them into accountability. And the biggest law change is that any sexual crimes that happen to those 13 and under, there is no statute of limitations, which is very important. So even if it's been 20 years, you can report it if it has happened to you when you were 13 and under. I would love to know what you guys had thought about the verdict of what the judges gave her, 3 years of probation and this whole story. So thank you so much for listening to today's case. Hope you guys learned something. Big thank you to Aura for sponsoring today's video. Remember to go to aura.com/grazytv to get your 2 weeks free trial and get your protection. See you guys in my next video.